Good Wednesday morning. Welcome to another Wednesday in the Word. Today we're looking in the Gospel of Mark. We're starting in chapter 11, starting in verse 27. They arrived again in Jerusalem, and while Jesus was walking in the temple courts, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders came to him. "By what authority are you doing these things?" they asked, "and who gave you authority to do this?" Jesus replied, "I will ask you one question. Answer me, and I will tell you by what authority I am doing these things. John's baptism, was it from heaven or from men? Tell me." They discussed it amongst themselves and said, "If we say from heaven, he will ask, then why didn't you believe him? But if we say from men," they feared the people, for everyone held that John was a prophet. So they answered Jesus, "We don't know." Jesus said, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I am doing these things." There's a line from a movie, and it must be a famous line because I've never seen the movie, but I know the line, and it says, "You want the truth, you can't handle the truth." And that's essentially what Jesus said to the Pharisees here. He said, "I know you have questions, I know you want the answers, but the problem is, even if I gave you the answer, you wouldn't believe it. Even if you had truth, you couldn't handle it. You couldn't handle the fact that I do these authority on my own authority. That's whose authority I have. I don't need any other because I am God." They couldn't handle that. And sometimes we are like that. We have many questions of God, and we ask, and I'm sure there are times when we ask God questions, and we say, "God, we need the answers." And he looks at us and he said, "You know what? You're just not ready for the answers." And you say, "Ben, are you sure about that? Like, doesn't that seem God's withholding information from us?" Yes, he does. Because sometimes we honestly just aren't ready for the answers. That's what he did to the Pharisees. He could have given them the proper answer, but he said, "You know what? You're not ready to receive that answer." And in our own lives, there are times like this, and it can be frustrating when we don't get an answer because we want to know. But there are times when we need to look at ourselves, we need to work on our attitude, our humility, our whatever it would be. And God says, "You know what? You're just not quite ready to receive this answer yet. If I gave you the answer, you would explain it away some other way, and it wouldn't make the difference. Keep searching, keep getting closer to me, and one day you will be ready for that answer. But maybe now is not the time." So maybe if there's an answer that you've asked, or there's an answer you want from God, a question you've asked and you haven't gotten an answer, maybe the answer is, "You know what? Maybe there's something I need to change here in my life. Maybe there's a heart problem. Maybe I just need to learn more. Maybe there's something I'm doing that I'm just not quite ready for this answer." And I'm not saying we can be perfect. God knows we're not perfect. But sometimes you just have to accept from God that, you know what? Even if I don't get this answer, I'm going to keep trying to become a better person and a better person. I'm going to keep trying to become more like Christ. I'm going to keep looking, and maybe the answer you will find somewhere in the Bible. Maybe there'll come a time where you are ready and God will give you that answer. But when we look at the Pharisees, we understand that God had the answer to their questions, but they weren't ready for it yet. There was a time later when the disciples came around that I'm sure that God said, "All right, now is the time. They may not believe you, but you give them the answer as to where the authority came from." Maybe they were ready for it. Maybe they weren't. But all we know is that at this time, Jesus said, "I know you have questions. You want the answer, but you know what? You're not ready to hear it." And it's not because God didn't love the Pharisees. He didn't have less love for the Pharisees. I know it seems like it because he got mad at them a lot. But Jesus wanted each one of these Pharisees to come to know truth, to come to repentance and faith. And he loved them, but they just at this time weren't ready for the answer. And I think sometimes in our lives, there's questions we ask where God says, "You know what? You're just not quite ready for that answer yet." But we just need to we don't need to give up and say, well, if I'm getting the answer, I guess I'm never getting the answer. We say, you know what? I'm going to keep following God. I'm going to keep working hard. I'm going to keep studying with the trust that in God's time, the answer will come when I am ready for it. That's trust, and that's faith. Anyways, there's your thought for this week. We'll see you next Wednesday.